Well, folks, I think we're going to get started. It's 10 a.m. and we've got lots of information to cover here today. So welcome to our webinar today, Maintaining Your Brain Health. We are from Alzheimer San Diego, and my co-host today, who I'm very happy to be presenting with, is Miss Mina Milchian.
Good morning.
And let me just advance the slide so you see a picture of her and I, and of course you can see us here today as well too. We've got some other colleagues and volunteers joining us, and I'll introduce them shortly. So it's October 1st today. I can't believe it. How many months have gone by here that we've been doing all this Zoom business, and here we are still at it. And I suspect that we'll be doing this for quite some time. I hope not related necessarily because of the pandemic, but because we know that many more people are able to attend our classes by logging in from some more distant locations where before you perhaps wouldn't have been able to drive down to our office or to any of our other locations. So we welcome everybody, and we're going to talk about some interesting things here today. And so here's our agenda for today, folks. We are going to be talking about the key factors in healthy aging. And notice we're just saying healthy aging overall. You know, taking care of our bodies, our hearts, our muscles, our systems, our brains, everything, it's all connected. So we're just talking about healthy aging in general. We will be talking about the common symptoms of dementia and how those are different from normal age-related changes. And that's an important area we get lots of questions from families on. And, you know, I mean, the truth of it is, folks, I do the same thing. I said this yesterday in a conversation with a colleague. My memory's been not so great this last little while. And I'm like, am I developing Alzheimer's disease, or what is this stress related to the pandemic? So I say that just because I want you to know, if you worry a little bit about yourself, you're not alone in that. Even us professionals here, you know, we worry about those things too. So we'll talk about what's normal and what's not normal. We're going to review the lifestyle factors that decrease the risk of experiencing a change in cognition and memory as we age. Now, and again, language is important here. We're talking about lifestyle factors that decrease the risk. We're not, unfortunately, folks, we're not talking about prevention. So we know that there are lots of good people out there that have lived really healthy lives and done everything possible to take good care of themselves over the course of time. And they have, unfortunately, still developed Alzheimer's disease. And so we want to, you know, do those good things to be sure, and do everything we can to try and mitigate the risks of developing dementia. And, you know, unfortunately, the truth is there's nothing preventative out there for us right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Mina, and she's going to get us started here with some key factors in healthy aging. Here you go, Mina.
Thank you, Ms. Jean. So like Jean mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit to spend some time here talking about the key factors in healthy or typical aging and the changes that do come with age. Because we want to normalize change as a process, as a part of the process of aging. And that's something that we've been talking a lot more about at Alzheimer's San Diego, is understanding that aging is a part of life, and to normalize the changes that come with that, and know how to make the important changes that we can make to maximize our days and our quality of life. So Ms. Jean, if you haven't already, if I can get control of the screen. And then I can take us on to the next slide. Perfect. So there are quite a few changes you can expect as you get older. And these are going to have to do with every system in the body. And two big ones are muscular changes and skeletal changes, right? You're going to see you're going to see a change in your bone density. You're going to see a change in muscle mass. Oh my goodness, it's gone rogue. There we go. Okay, you're going to see changes in muscle mass. You're going to see changes in bone density. So it's really important to understand that these are a part of getting older. And so it's important to, keep contact with your doctor to make sure that you're addressing those very normal changes, right? Taking the right nutrients, incorporating the right exercises, because that reduced muscle mass and that reduced bone density can lead to injury. You're going to see changes in cardiovascular health, right? The heart's ability and power to pump blood through the veins. Sometimes vessels can get smaller depending on the lifestyle that you live. In your early years, there's a lot of resilience within your cardiovascular system. And as you get older, you have to be a little bit more careful about maintaining your cardiovascular system and helping that system run smoothly, right? There's a little bit more maintenance that needs to happen, a little bit more mindfulness around that system. Because that system, the cardiovascular system, the ability for blood to get to where it needs to get affects pretty much everything else, including the brain. And one thing I'm going to talk a lot about today is this very close connection between your body and your brain and how much the research keeps showing us that the two are very connected. There are definitely going to be changes in digestive health. In your younger years, you might notice that there's a lot of things that you can eat, no problem. You might start to get a little bit more sensitive to certain foods. You might start to need to supplement more nutrients because your digestive system isn't as powerfully absorbing those nutrients. So you might start having to supplement things to be able to absorb more nutrients, which again is connected to those needs related to the skeletal and muscular changes. I can definitely notice with every year, I can not tolerate spicy food like I did before. And that's gonna probably have to do with, gut microbiome and the way that my body can tolerate certain stressors, certain irritants. There's gonna be change in your ability to perceive and sense. The two big ones are gonna be your visual and your auditory sensory capabilities. These are going to change with age. And thankfully, we live in an age where we can wear glasses, use hearing aids, and not let that affect our quality of life too much. But these are things that actually really, really affect quality of life. When you can't hear the world or you're having trouble seeing the world, it makes it harder to interact with the world. And being able to interact with the world is a really key aspect in quality of life that we're going to talk a little bit about later. And of course, we're going to see changes with skin, decreased collagen presence in our skin, decreased elasticity, and this is very, very regular and normal part of the aging process. Okay, so we're going to see those changes in our physical body. We're also going to see changes in that organ right up here called the brain. So if you were to take a picture of a 20-year-old's brain and a picture of someone in their 70s and their brain, you're going to see less volume in the person's brain who's 70 years old. That's a very typical thing to happen, just less volume. There's less communication between those neurons. In younger years, there's a constant firing that's happening between neurons. If you've ever spent an extended amount of time with a 20-year-old, you get a sense of how that is, right? It's constant firing, a lot of energy in there. And that's getting a little bit more mellow as we age. There's reduced blood flow going on. Remember in that last slide, we talked about the changes in the cardiovascular system. Well, the cardiovascular system does power the brain through blood flow. And so there's reduced blood flow, and that can affect our brain's ability to, power those neurons. And so that it all makes sense when you look at it as a big system. It all starts to make sense, all these different pieces of the puzzle, right? The blood flow, the loss of volume, the neural strength, things like that. And you're going to notice those pieces coming together more and more in this presentation. And so, since we're seeing those physical changes in the brain, those very clear-cut loss of volume, less communication, reduced blood flow, it makes sense that we're going to see changes in cognition that are, again, part of the typical aging process. You're going to see some mild memory decline, right? This is different from something like cognitive impairment or dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Those are different categories. With the typical aging process, outside of those diagnoses, there will be mild memory decline. Maybe some trouble remembering names right away. Needing to refresh those facts over and over again. That can be a part of the normal aging process. Control and maintenance of attention is a really big one to remember. It takes a lot of brain power to focus on a particular subject. And something that we tend to do when we're younger, maybe in our 20s and 30s, is we think that we can multitask, which actually there's no such thing as multitasking. When we think we're multitasking, we're actually switching our attention between different processes. That takes a lot of neural strength. It takes a lot of rapid neural connection. And as things are mellowing out in the aging process, that gets harder and harder to do. So that might mean knowing that when you're having a conversation with someone, if you're recognizing that, your attention is not as strong as it used to be, putting your phone away. Right? Those are those little changes that we make addressing the changes that age brings. And it might take longer to process information. Again, that's a part of the aging process. Things might have to be repeated a few times for you to get it. And again, this is distinct from Alzheimer's and dementia, but we're talking about the normal aging process. If you feel like you need to ask people to slow down every now and then, that might just be, part of the trajectory of age. So there are a lot of different factors that affect the trajectory of the aging process for us, right? We know that no two people age exactly the same way. Some of us go gray earlier in life. Some of us will never need glasses. And so we've all met someone whose aging process looked really different from ours. And so these are the things that can contribute to that. And the big one is genetics, right? Pattern baldness is something that's very much a genetic factor. If both of your parents had really great eyesight throughout life, then there's a really good chance that you're going to have really great eyesight throughout life. So genetics are a really big role in this. Disease risk factors are also a really big role, and that includes everything from, our very common metabolic conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes, to things like cancer. These are going to put certain stresses on our body that can affect how we age. And of course, there's that former category that I mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about those categories. Those are controllable to an extent. And so there are changes we can make to mitigate the role that disease plays in our aging process and ultimately our cognition. Because this presentation is about brain health. So if we talk a lot about physical health, it's because, again, there is so much connection between physical health and brain health. Other factors that play a role include the environment, right? The culture that we're aging in. That's a really big one to me and close to my heart. If we live in a culture that is very aging positive, that empowers people in older age to remain active parts of society, I think that's going to play a really big role in how aging moves forward for someone, versus a culture where we teach that people need to just stay home when they get older. which we're going to see that's a factor that can contribute to decline, right? Being socially isolated. Occupation is a big one as well. Do you work a job where you're on your feet all day long? Do you work a job behind a desk? Are you really stressed out all the time? These are going to have effects on the aging process. And finally, education. And education can refer to multiple different things. One thing that we have seen in the research is that the more numbers of education that you engaged in, the more protective that seems to be for your brain. That being said, it's not like, you're sitting here today and you didn't go to college 20, 30 years ago, you're at a loss. What it really means is that continuing to learn is associated with a lot of positive things in the aging process. So there are also a number of lifestyle and controllable factors, right? We can't change our genetics, at least not at this point in time. We can't really change the fact that we have to work, right? And we are trying to change our culture around aging, but that's going to take time. And we might be able to change things like our propensity to disease like diabetes or heart disease, but things like cancer, unfortunately, there's sometimes not a whole lot we can do. That being said, a big chunk of this presentation is going to be about what we do have power over and what the research shows us is really impactful. So when it comes to lifestyle and controllable factors that aid cognition, a really big one is managing your numbers. And I hate to reduce people and their health to a set of numbers. But these can just be a really great index of what might need some work, And you can address things like blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, and body mass index with just a couple of changes. If your diet is not serving you super well right now and you address that, that could just have a cascade of positive effects, and it's going to help with your cognition. Because as I'm going to talk about, and I think Jean's going to touch on a little bit, is researchers and doctors are noticing that when your heart is healthy, it has really great impact on your brain as well. And it makes a whole lot of sense. Your heart really powers your brain by pumping blood to it. Smoking cessation is a big one. I think most of us out there know that smoking has so many, it does a lot of things to our body, a lot of immediate things and a lot of long-term things, right? Primarily, it affects our lungs and our lungs' ability to get oxygen into our body. Where does oxygen go? It goes into our blood, and that gets pumped into our brain. And then there's just some toxicity factors in most cigarettes that could undermine our health. It's never too late. It really isn't. Don't let perfect be enemy of the good. It would have been great to quit 20 years ago, but if today is the day, then you're going to see some immediate benefits from quitting smoking because of that component of getting oxygen into your blood vessels and into your cells. Mental health management is a topic that's close to my heart, and I think it's something that we overlook the most. That brain-body well-being connection. I think that in every stage of life, we need to have our support systems. I think that when things change with our bodies and with our lives, that we need to know where our support is, right? Changing relationships, changing friendships. How are we going to cope with these changes? Sometimes it's not easy to cope with the fact that we can't do what we used to do. And there's a lot to be said about when you nurture yourself from a mental perspective and what that does for our overall health and this whole system that we're talking about. And so I'm a big advocate for therapy, but maybe even meditation, maybe even a weekly check-in with your friends. That's going to have some really positive impact on your overall health when you take care of that as well. And I talked a little bit about this before, addressing sensory loss. Those hearing aids and glasses, make sure they're up to date. Make sure that they're working the way they're supposed to. Make sure the batteries are charged. I think people forget what an impact that it makes. And then you go to the doctor and you get the right prescription. And now you see the world, right? Or now you hear the world because you know, powered up your hearing aid to the level that you needed. Don't underestimate the impact that that can have. For brain health, again, you're going to notice a lot of these things are related. Exercise. So much research coming out about exercise. Again, that affects your cardiovascular system and your heart's ability to pump blood to the brain. But there's just so much more coming out about exercise, about what it does to your hormones and what it does to your psychology and what it does to the strength of your neurons. And what I find myself saying a lot is don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. We have it in our heads sometimes. I know I can be this way, that if it doesn't involve a 1-hour session at the gym, then it doesn't count. That's not true. If it means getting up and going for a walk for 30 minutes as opposed to not doing anything, it's still going to come with a lot of benefits. In fact, walking is fantastic because it's so low impact. It's going to have some really great effects on your energy, your circadian rhythm, and we're going to talk about how sleep is really important too. If you can throw in some strength training in there to address that loss of muscle mass, even better, but something is better than nothing. Diet, we're going to talk a lot about diet. I think that's going to be the big ticket item in this presentation. But again, maintaining a diet that's sustainable and addresses heart health and all of the other systems that connect to the brain is going to be really key. Intellectual stimulation, that's really important in terms of just keeping those cells working, keeping those neurons working. We talked about how education is a protective factor in aging and in cognition. Keeping yourself challenged, right? Whether, again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but whether that's learning a new language or doing puzzles, we don't have to get intellectually lazy as we get older just because we're not going to school anymore. There is research suggesting that social activity is really good for the brain. There is even more research that says that social isolation is detrimental to our health. It can actually exacerbate things like diabetes and heart health. People who are living in social isolation are physically less resilient against those things. And so incorporating some kind of social interaction in your life, which is really hard these days for reasons that I don't even need to talk about. But again, that principle of doing something rather than nothing, if that means a couple more phone calls a week checking in with friends, a socially distanced hello to your neighbor, just something to work that part of the brain that controls the fact that we're social beings. Humans are meant to be social. That's a part of our survival mechanism. Sleep is very important. Sleep is still kind of a mysterious thing to a lot of researchers, but what's coming out is that sleep can be very detoxifying for our brain. So when we sleep, that's kind of when our brain is doing like its cleaning process, to put it in very crude terms. And so addressing if you are not sleeping enough at night, if you're not sleeping well, if it's taking forever for you to fall asleep, is it a medication? Is it that cup of tea before bed? Maybe taking a survey to see how your sleep is going. And now I'm going to hand it on over to my colleague, Jean.
Thank you, Mina. Very good. So let's continue on a little bit. As we start this section, what I want to do is just take a few brief moments to talk about the differences between dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And if you have any questions about this, very specific area, we do have a great class that is called Dementia 101, where we delve into this much deeper. But just for general knowledge, I want you to understand that dementia is not any one particular disease or diagnosis. Rather, it's the word that we use to describe these set of symptoms caused by some kind of pathology going on in the brain that is affecting cognition and memory, and it's to the point that it's interfering with daily activities. That the changes in thinking and judgment and reasoning and decision making, in addition to memory and other areas, is is impacting just regular day-to-day life, more so than occasional forgetfulness. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, and it is progressive, and it is a degenerative disease of the brain that is causing damage to the brain cells and damage to their ability to communicate with each other. And so you see in this particular graphic, which is showing a cross-section of a brain, and on the left side is the healthy brain, and on the right side is the advanced Alzheimer's. And because of that cell death that is going on, and that the communication pathways between cells are being damaged and destroyed, we can see visually there's literally some atrophy of the brain. And we can see, as compared to the healthy brain, there's some, kind of big dark holes really that are happening in the brain as there's damage being done. And we show you this graphic simply because it's important for all of us to understand that for a person who's experiencing dementia, sometimes we might think that they're trying to be contrary with us, or push our buttons, or are just not listening properly. And that's not true. And this is the visual reminder of the actual changes going on in the brain that's affecting their ability to think and to remember. So, having said that, let's talk about this heavy topic of what's normal and what is not normal in terms of age-related changes versus dementia. So, normal age-related changes in memory would be some difficulty remembering names or finding words. Now, I do this. I don't know how many of you folks do, where you're trying to remember the name of a person. And, for me, I can always give all sorts of detail about the person, maybe where they live, who their husband is, who their kids are, what they do. I could probably describe them, but I can't pull the name out of my head. It's very frustrating. At some point, I'll remember the name. It'll come to me. It might be 10 minutes later, it might be half an hour later, it might be the next day. But eventually that name or the word that I've lost will come to me. And another thing that happens just with age is misplacing objects more often. How many of you folks have lost your phone or your keys, car keys or other keys, or your eyeglasses during this past week? Raise your hand or send it in chat. And for sure it's me. This is a regular thing for me, especially with glasses. So I kind of almost have a pair of glasses in every room. So, and then of course the other thing for me with my glasses is I take them off and put them down, and then I can't see. So then I really have trouble finding them. So that's all normal, very normal stuff. It's frustrating, but the thing is we're able to retrace our steps to find these items, right? When you can't find them, you think, okay, where did I have it last? Do I remember putting them down on the kitchen counter? So you go out to the kitchen counter, and maybe that triggers another memory that then I picked them up again, and then I walked into the living room. So we retrace our steps, and we're almost always able to find whatever item that's been misplaced. For somebody who's experiencing dementia, it's much more than that. It's getting lost in familiar places, such as their own neighborhood, your own neighborhood grocery store, Vaughn's, traveling by foot or by car or whatever other means of transportation in familiar areas, and not being able to, getting lost and not being able to, safely find your way back home. Another thing that may be occurring is actually forgetting the function of objects. And that might be everything from not knowing, kind of forgetting the differences and the function between, say, your phone and your dark colored TV remote. Getting those things mixed up and forgetting which one does what. So that's a more significant type of change in memory as compared to misplacing my glasses for, a few minutes. So, and then in some other areas here, we have in our area of thinking and cognition, over time and as a part of normal aging, we are slower to learn new things, and we do have changes in attention or concentration. Why are we slower to learn new things? Well, because our brains are all, got a lot of stuff up there over the course of our years, right? A lot of information up here. I always kind of think about my brain as being this vast, I hope it's vast, library with lots of books on the shelves and lots of files. And when I'm looking for a particular piece of information, I have to go looking around in my brain to find that. And because it's already got lots of information in there, it makes it a little bit harder. I don't know if harder is the right word, but it does take me more time to learn new things. My changes in attention or concentration, I always kind of giggle about this one because the comment I heard that always made the best sense to me just in the past few years of my life has been, remember when you were a 20-year-old youngster and you'd be running around with your friends in your car? Back then, there weren't restrictions on how many people you could have with you. So we always had, five or more pals in the car with us and bombing around town and with the music blaring high and, staying on top of the driving and being able to find your way in a new neighborhood was really not an issue. So now, I have to follow the rule that I saw on Facebook a while back is that, if I'm having trouble finding a new place to go to, I need to turn the radio down in order to see better. And I hope that resonates with some of you. It's just like we need less distraction as we get older to be able to focus on what it is we're doing. For people with dementia, the changes are different. They are having difficulty with planning and sequencing, with being able to kind of map things out in terms of, okay, before I get to leave the house on a chore today, I have to, have a shower, get dressed, brush my teeth, put my hair up. I need to have my car keys, my purse, my wallet, all the different things. They're having trouble with those things. And it's not just a matter of them being slower to learn new things. They are unable to learn new things. And think about it in the context of, you don't have, your short-term memory is not there anymore. You can't build on skills, on a new skill, if you can't keep the memory of it, okay? So if I'm, wanting to do a new recipe, and, the first step is I need a half a cup of flour. And the next day I go to do the recipe again and I can't remember. I'm going to have to look at the recipe and start all over because it's not there. So we're unable to learn new things. Normal part of aging process is changes, as Mina talked about, the vision, hearing, and other sensory loss areas. That's just what happens to us as we age, as our organs age, our senses, all these different things are being impacted. For people with dementia, it's much more significant changes, especially in the visual spatial perception, and problems with balance and falls. And it's not age, although they may have still some age-related changes and likely will, but it's more significant than that because of the changes going on in the brain, causing a real narrowing of the visual field and problems with the inner ear being able to perceive where we are in terms of space and being upright, and problems with the body, with the proprioceptors being able to tell us, oh, there's a little bump in the sidewalk here that as I'm going over, I need to adjust for. This kind of information that is getting garbled up for folks with dementia. And then in the area of behavior, who we are kind of as people, as personalities, doesn't really change that significantly. If you're a happy, positive person throughout life, you're pretty likely to remain a happy, positive person. Yeah, is there ups and downs, of course, but that's likely to be who you are. If you're a curmudgeon, and I like that term, curmudgeon. I've had some curmudgeons, lovable curmudgeons in my life, and they've remained curmudgeons throughout their life. They didn't have this behavior or personality change. So we don't expect that. That's not a part of normal aging, but it does happen frequently with people with dementia. Can be some real significant mood or personality changes. Sometimes it can be positive, but oftentimes it's negative. And I'll give you a quick example of that. Was a family that told us about as dad got older and he developed dementia, he started to they said swear like a sailor. With all due respect to our sailors and our Navy out there. But this guy just started to use swear words they didn't think he ever knew. And it was completely out of character for him. Why? He was a pastor. And this was part of the new personality change that occurred with him. And kudos to the family. They accommodated to that. They understood it was the disease causing the change. We see our people with dementia having difficulty initiating new tasks. I always say it's like the starter button is just not working anymore for these folks. And we see social withdrawal as well too. So just the world is shrinking and becoming smaller. So these are some of the examples of normal age-related changes and possible symptoms of dementia. So what are the risk factors for developing dementia? Well, there's a few of them, and Mina talked about them a little bit as well too. And so the first thing I guess I want to ask all of you folks who are here with us is, who do you think develops dementia? Who gets dementia? And feel free to throw some answers there into chat. Who gets dementia? And so we'll come back to that question, but let's run through things here. So risk factors, age is the number one risk factor. The longer we live, the older we get, the more likely we are to develop Alzheimer's disease or some type of dementia. At age 65, the research shows it's about 1 in 9 people that has dementia. By age 85, it's 1 in 3, almost 1 in 2 people that will develop dementia. And so that's just one of the factors research clearly shows it. The longer we live, the more likely we are to develop dementia. Women have a higher risk factor for developing dementia. Why? Research is still looking at that. For a period of time, the thought process was that it was, because at that time, statistically, women lived longer than men. But that's kind of evened out over the years now. And in fact, research is looking more at the changing hormonal levels in women related to pregnancy and childbirth. As Mina discussed, genetics for some people can be a factor. That's a very, very small percentage of families affected by the genetic biomarkers for developing Alzheimer's disease. However, it is true that having family history can be a risk factor, and we're referring specifically to first-degree family members, which means your mother, your father, and any siblings, brothers or sisters. Other health conditions, and particularly those of the metabolic disorders that Mina talked about, are risk factors: hypertension, high blood pressure, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. These are all known risk factors for developing dementia. And referring to education, again, what Mina talked about was having less years of formal education can be a risk factor. And again, just to understand, we're not necessarily talking about having those degrees, those initials after your name. Formal education is everything from what we're doing here today. This is a class, you're here to learn. So it has nothing to do with whether you have a college degree or you don't, graduated or didn't. We're talking about intentional learning, taking advantage of those opportunities. Having a head trauma, particularly with a loss of consciousness, is a risk factor for developing dementia. And regardless of the age you were at, if you were a young kid who got bonked in the head with, I don't know, a baseball and was unconscious, that is a risk factor over the course of your years of life for developing dementia at a later time. And Down syndrome is also a risk factor because of the genetics of Down syndrome, and that the folks with Down syndrome do carry, again, the biomarker for developing dementia. So when we come back to the question is who develops dementia? And I saw some of the answers is, anyone can develop dementia, anyone and everyone. Dementia doesn't show favorites so much to anyone. We do have a couple of groups of people who are impacted more by dementia. And that's because they have higher incidences of these metabolic conditions of the hypertension, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. And when I mention that, I'm referring specifically to Blacks and to Hispanics, that they have a higher incidence of dementia because of these metabolic conditions, as well as other factors too. So at this time, here is what we know and what we say from the National Institute on Aging, is that there is no definitive evidence yet about what can prevent Alzheimer's or age-related cognitive decline. Now, that's being worked on, to be sure, but at this point in time, there is no one thing or combination of things that has been proven, supported by research, to show that it prevents Alzheimer's disease or age-related decline. So we've talked about the key factors in healthy aging and the common symptoms of dementia versus age-related changes. So let's take a couple of minutes here. I thought we were going to do some questions here.
That's what I had, Jean.
So we are going to stop oh, here it is. It's right there. I've got it covered by my Q&A, and that's why I didn't see it.
There's a
questions.
Couple of really good ones.
Let's take some questions here. Now I know there was a question from earlier that Kristen thought would be good for us to answer. I'm going to look to you for that, Mina. It's from Bruce. He says, has the U.S. gradually gotten better with eating, exercise, etc., compared to other cultures, and what the connection there is between those factors and Alzheimer's disease or dementia?
Really good question. That's a good question and a tough question. Reason being that in order to get a sense of those trends, you need these long-term cohort studies. And so I don't have a hard answer for you, but I did recently encounter a study that says that the rates of diagnosing Alzheimer's are actually going down a little bit. So I want to distinguish between rate of diagnosis and prevalence of diagnosis. Prevalence is going up, and you're going to see us saying that. That's because the baby boomer population, which is a huge chunk of the US population, is entering the age range where Alzheimer's and dementia is typically diagnosed. Because that age group is aging, the prevalence is going up, the numbers are going up. But we're noticing that the ratio of people that are diagnosed to undiagnosed is going down. It's hard to know why that is, honestly, but truthfully, I think that as a society, we are getting better at recognizing the brain and body connection and recognizing the importance of diet and nutrition. But I don't have a hard answer for you quite yet. I think we're going to see a lot more insight in those cohort studies. Those are my favorite kind of studies to read. So sorry that was a non-answer, but the rates are going down.
But, you know, I mean, unfortunately, that is the way it is. There's lots of times that we have to give non-answers because the definitive answer is not here yet. We don't have it yet. And we are relying on science and research to provide us with those answers. Now we've got another question here, Mina, related to sleep. You talked about how lack of good quality sleep can be a risk factor.
Yeah.
So how, you know, looking at it from the other direction, the question is, do the benefits of sleep depend on the length of consecutive time? In other words, you know, how many hours you get, and how do naps fit into this? Are they a good thing or not a good thing?
I get asked that. I think you and I have both been asked that a lot, Jean, especially through our Take Charge program, especially as a napper myself. That's a concern of mine. So to answer your question, what's important is that you enter the REM cycle of sleep, right? So not those shallow little sleeps that we have sometimes, but really getting into that deep sleep. That's where the benefits of sleep come in. And so you want to spend a considerable amount of time in your REM cycle sleep. And so it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality of sleep. Some of us will just go up and down in terms of like through the night, we're not getting that quality REM deep sleep. So we want to address that. And we want to give ourselves enough time. I don't remember the number on this, Jean, but the amount of time it takes to get into REM. So you want to factor that in. As far as the amount of time, I mean, ballpark, people say 8 to 10 hours a night, right? But what I've heard is that it's going to depend on the person. Some of us are going to be optimal on maybe closer to 7. Some of us are going to need that 10. And so it's really going to depend on, I think, each person. As far as how naps fit into it, my impression is that if you're taking such frequent naps that they are disrupting that long nighttime sleep that you're reserving for yourself, and it's making it harder for you to get into that REM cycle, then you want to reconsider nap time. But I don't think there's any hard evidence that naps are necessarily good or bad. For me, I know that excessive napping can deteriorate the quality of my sleep at nighttime. So I'm mindful of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Mina. So I think we're going to move along here. Oh, we've got some other questions, but I think we'll wait for them. I think we can tie them in with some of the material we're covering here shortly. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mina. I think you're going to be talking to us now about the next section on some lifestyle factors that can help decrease our risk.
Absolutely. So I do want to kind of put out a disclaimer that I think is really important. And I want to abolish any impression that you may have that a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis is a failing on your part because you didn't do these things. You know, Jean mentioned these are not prevention. These are not, you know, treatments. It's not necessarily that you do all of these things and you check all of these off and you don't get dementia or Alzheimer's. And that if you do, it's that you failed all of these things. These are just known lifestyle factors associated with risk. And it just so happens that these lifestyle factors will improve quality of life in a lot of different areas. So when we talk about lifestyle factors, we want to talk about the ones that we know will not do harm overall. So I'm going to go over those right now. So physical activity. Oh my goodness, it's going rogue again. There we go. Physical activity. I spent a good amount of time raving about the benefits of exercise, and we'll talk a little bit about what exercise does for the brain. It increases the volume of blood vessels, and it strengthens connections between neurons. So it's letting blood get to the brain in the way that it needs. As we get older, something that can happen is a restriction of blood vessels, is a shrinking, is less of a resilience. Exercise is kind of like a way to bolster what's still there. And it strengthens the connections between those neurons, which is the basis of our cognition. Neural connections is how thoughts happen. And so if you think of, what exercise is doing, it makes sense that regular exercise and that bolstered connection is going to really do great things for our mind and our brain. Raises the level of nerve growth factor in the brain, and it stimulates the brain's ability to maintain what's there, to maintain those old connections, and it helps create new ones, right? Adopting new information into your brain. Exercise makes that process of the neuron, that process of the neural connections work a little bit better. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna keep coming up on this theme. Exercise is good for our hearts, puts you in a better mood. In my opinion, if you tire yourself out with exercise, you sleep better at night. So this is a lifestyle factor that does no harm. So diet, I think a lot of people are waiting for this one. What do I eat, right? And I already see some questions about like different spices and different supplements and things like that. So I'm going to go over what the research has validated. That's a really important disclaimer I want to put out. When we tell you something here at Alzheimer's San Diego, we're going to cite research that has been validated and replicated from folks that from institutions that have really tested this out on a lot of people. What we're noticing is that the research shows that what's called a Mediterranean diet is associated with better brain health and a reduced risk of Alzheimer's. What is the Mediterranean diet? Here it is listed out for you. A lot of vegetables, no surprise there. I don't think there's anyone out there that denies we all could be getting more vegetables. Legumes, fruits, whole grains and cereals, fish, and I accidentally clicked so you kind of got a spoiler as to what kind of fish, took away the drama, but also olive oil. The nutrients in these particular foods are associated with less inflammation. They're nutrient dense, so they get those nutrients to the brain to help it to function. And I'm going to bring up inflammation because inflammation is kind of a buzzword these days. Everyone's trying to reduce inflammation. Chronic inflammation is an issue in a lot of things. Inflammation is kind of like a defensive, protective thing that the body does, and sometimes it's a little bit in high gear. And so I'm going to bring up turmeric because that comes up so much instead of waiting for the question period. Turmeric can help reduce inflammation overall. Now, I don't think there's research out that says popping turmeric is necessarily going to like dramatically change the risk of developing Alzheimer's, but I think it's really helpful to incorporate turmeric as a part of your diet because it does have some fantastic anti-inflammatory properties. You can buy turmeric as a spice and incorporate it in your food. Sometimes I'll put a tablespoon in my oatmeal. It is a very like strong spice. I'm Iranian American and it's in a lot of our food, so I'm used to it, but you might find it a little much, in which case you can buy turmeric supplements, and it is it's recommended that you take it with, I think, curcumin alongside to promote absorption. So I'm not going to talk too much about turmeric specifically, but I know that a lot of people have questions about it, so I thought I'd bring it up. We want to moderate the amount of alcohol we drink. So there was an example question about, is wine good for me? Wine has antioxidants, which are great, but alcohol might not be the best for the brain. So we want to limit the amount of alcohol that we drink. So it's not necessarily that there's something you're getting in wine that you can't get somewhere else through maybe fruit, right? And with the fruit, you're getting that fiber as well. Here's the thing that I say. If you look forward to your glass of wine all day long and it's not sustainable for you to give up wine completely, then find a middle ground. All of these lifestyle changes that you make as a result of today's presentation have to be sustainable, or you're not going to do them, right? In a perfect world, you would get up at 5 a.m. and do your 2-hour gym session, and then you'd have a protein shake, and you wouldn't touch that glass of wine, and you would only eat fish, and you would never have fried chicken, even though it's your favorite food. That's a perfect world. And you might burn out if you hold yourself to that. So maybe looking at your wine consumption and saying, maybe instead of every night, every other night, maybe instead of 2 glasses, 1 glass of wine. There's also research about how alcohol can disrupt the sleep cycle. So keep that in mind as well. If you're having trouble getting into that REM, cycle, or having trouble falling asleep, then you might want to reconsider alcohol. The research and the Mediterranean diet, all of that calls for low amounts of saturated fats, dairy, meat, and poultry. Staying well hydrated is really important. I think that's the first thing you want to look at anytime you're having an issue is, am I dehydrated? A dehydrated brain isn't working at optimal level. So make sure you're getting as much water into your day as possible. I know 8 cups is that magic number. If it can't be 8 cups, make it 6 cups. And to go back to the fish, we are looking at a certain few kinds of fish that are the most beneficial because they have these really great nutrients in them. And I'm going to see if you guys, I'm going to give it a minute to see if you guys can guess what this acronym stands for.
The first S should be
pretty easy.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah.
We've given you a hint here, right on the slide.
Salmon, which is my favorite.
Yeah, mine too.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and I think, yeah, we got salmon, mackerel, anchovy, which is a controversial one, sardines, I think another controversial one, and herring. These particular fish are high in certain nutrients that are shown to be protective factors. They're usually found with lower levels of mercury in them. Lots of omega-3s. Omega-3 is a very important nutrient. So if you like these, incorporate them into your diet. My favorite is salmon. Really easy to make good salmon.
I like all of them.
Yeah?
Lucky me.
I know. Especially the anchovy and sardines. Cognitive activity, this one comes up a lot. Should I be doing puzzles? Do I have to be doing Sudoku? Is Sudoku better than crossword puzzles? Here's the thing. You just want to be stimulating your brain in a way that you like and that you'll stick to. Intellectual stimulation, what it'll do is it'll establish a cognitive reserve, right? It'll strengthen what's still there. It'll bolster what's still there. So if a part of your brain is compromised through an injury, through Alzheimer's, through aging, you have that reserve to really help compensate. And so, it's exercise for the brain, right? For example, if one arm, for some reason, you can't use it anymore, you're going to be using the other arm for twice as much. So you want to keep that arm strong. That's kind of the philosophy under cognitive activities. And it can be a lot of different things. It can be new experiences or challenges, making new friends, learning a new language, cooking a new kind of cuisine, playing a new instrument. It doesn't always have to be Sudoku. That's been a buzzword for a while now. If you hate Sudoku, you're never going to do it, right? But if you love Italian and Italian food, then you're probably going to be a little bit more compelled to learn Italian and stick with it. talked a little bit about social engagement. There is a relationship between frequent social activity and better cognitive function. And it could also be the opposite relationship. It could be that people who engage in regular social activities also have other lifestyle factors going on that protect them against Alzheimer's disease. So it's hard to pinpoint how that relationship works. That being said, I think there is a really huge benefit to being socially engaged, to maintaining those social connections. I think we've seen that now more than ever this year about what an impact it makes on our health when we become isolated. So, maintaining those connections, going out of your way to make sure you're interacting with the people in your life. I think it probably works a part of your brain that needs to be worked, right? As humans, we were designed to be social animals. It is part and parcel to our survival as a species. So it makes sense that it kind of throws us off balance if we spend a lot of time not connecting with other people. And it's really just important for quality of life. Alzheimer's and dementia risk aside, staying connected means that we have people to ask for help. We have people checking up on us. We have people giving us advice and new ways of thinking. That's a really big one because older people who enter, the older years of their life are at risk of becoming isolated. And that might have to do with culture, but it's something to address. Talked a little bit about sleep. There's a growing evidence that a lack of deep sleep may actually increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. That may have to do with the role that researchers are finding sleep plays in detoxifying the brain. And so this is why it's really important to address sleep issues. And that's a body of research that's growing every day. Our sleep needs do not change dramatically as we age. So like we were talking about before, there isn't like a set magic number, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, maybe even going up in that 10-hour range. We needed that amount of sleep as teenagers. We still need that amount of sleep as we age. One thing that I'm really big about, and I think is really helpful for creating good sleep habits, is what's called sleep hygiene. This is really, what it means is ritualizing your sleep process, training your body and your brain to think of right now as sleep time. So maybe transitioning from wake time to sleep time in a really deliberate way, having a routine, making the room comfortable, limiting naps, right? If they are affecting our ability to get into sleep. Caffeine and alcohol can play a role. Exercising regularly. You know your sleep habits. So if you know that you sleep warm and you need a fan on you, make sure to have that fan on you, right? It's a part of the sleep hygiene. It's a part of the ritual that makes your body realize it's sleep time. I'd actually be really interested to know if any of you have your specific sleep habits and strategies. So if you know of a really good tip, please share it in the chat, because I think this is one that people would love a lot of ideas on. Sleep is a tough one. We get into our habits around sleep and then we stick to them.
Mina, can I just ask a question myself?
Yeah.
I have read, I believe, that research suggests that having, like watching TV in bed or being on our iPads in bed is not a good thing for our brains, that, part of the sleep hygiene routine should be not having those electronics in bed with us as we're preparing to go to sleep.
That's a really good point.
What do you know of that with regards to research?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. We might even want to put that in this slide because that research is becoming really significant, that electronics emit blue light, right? This computer screen that I'm staring at right now emits blue light. And blue light actually disrupts something in our brain that helps us reach sleep mode. So whether it's the phone, the computer, the tablet, blue light can be very disruptive to our sleep patterns. So personally, I put phone and electronics away about an hour before bed, and that's what's recommended. is about an hour. The other thing that people are using more and more these days that you and I, Jean, have talked about is these special blue light glasses. You can get them. I got this at Target for about $10. They're not prescription, but they block blue light. They're very, they're kind of silly looking on me, but some research shows that it's a little bit helpful for reducing eye strain as well. I don't think you have to go out and buy blue light glasses necessarily. I think if you think technology is hurting your sleep, then just make a rule of no blue light, or at least the ones that are right up against your face right before bed, which is hard because it's really fun to scroll through things right before bed.
Well, it is, but if you're having trouble sleeping, then that's kind of a fairly easy fix.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. And I think it just kind of quiets down your brain a little bit if you're just putting everything else away and just focusing inward before sleep.
I would agree with that, just from the point of view as if I'm looking at the news or anything like that before bed, then it's harder for me to shut my head down.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't cooperate with me.
What's it doing? Do you want me to try?
Did I skip one? Okay. If you're concerned. So if you are noticing changes in your brain, if you are, recognizing that something is up, right? Or somebody else is recognizing that something is up, you want to talk to your doctor first, right? These days, doctors are doing their Zoom meetings. Just bring it up. Some doctors can do a quick memory test in the office. Let others know you're noticing something. Those trusted in your circle, maybe not everyone, but let others know you're noticing something so they can be a part of your team. They can maybe validate what you're experiencing or get help. We recommend regular memory screenings. Unfortunately, we've had to suspend our memory screening program. Normally when we're in the office, the third Thursday of every month, we do free memory screenings. And then we recommend doing that maybe once a year just to establish a baseline and see what you're working with. And then the process of getting a diagnosis can be a bit involved. It involves a lot of testing, sometimes some imaging. That's kind of outside the scope of this particular presentation, but if you want to learn more about diagnosis, you can always give us a call or catch another one of our webinars. Also, really important to note, and again, we go over this more in a different context in our different education classes, but sometimes you'll see memory changes that aren't necessarily age, they aren't necessarily Alzheimer's and dementia, but might have to do with medications, right? Some medications might be causing your brain to fog up a little bit. Another one that goes under the radar, and you'll see why I'm such a big advocate of mental health, is depression. Depression can cause memory loss and changes in the brain. So, make sure you're checking in with yourself, right? If other people are noticing some things about you, take some time to recognize and check in and see how you're doing. And maybe adopt medication to treat depression, right? We don't want to villainize medication. We don't villainize, the traditional pills that you take if they're addressing a need and improving quality of life. Illness and infection can also cause changes in memory. One of the big ones is urinary tract infections, but infections in general, kind of the load and the pressure they put on your body can reach your brain eventually and cause you to have some changes in cognition that eventually can often be reversed once that's treated. So we do want you to be aware of those. Again, getting deep into those is a little bit outside the scope, but we have some more information on that in our written materials if you want to call in if you're concerned about that, and even talk to your doctor. So just a few more things to be aware of. And I think that ends it for me. I think that's you, Jean.
Okay, well, before I have a look here at these websites with all of you, we've had a couple of more questions come in, Mina, that I think would be good for us to just mention here. And some of them have been, it's about supplements and whether supplements are, a good thing, or, everything from melatonin for sleep to DHEA to help with cognitive stimulation. Other thoughts on supplements as well too. And so I wondered if you could just speak to that, Mina, from the point of view of research and what research is telling us about supplements.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So I'm going to speak really generally because we could dive into a lot of these supplements. But the thing about supplements is some of them are things that your body needs, you might be deficient in. And some of them you might just urinate out because your body didn't need them. A lot of people out there are trying to capitalize and make money off of the anxieties that we have around cognition, dementia, Alzheimer's. And so a lot of supplements are being put on the market. They're making really big claims about what they can do for our memory. Those supplements can be expensive. And there have been a couple of those that the FDA and FTC have come down on really hard for the claims that they made. If you are deficient in a certain vitamin, in a certain, something that your body needs, you might notice that you supplement it and you're doing a lot better. I would say before introducing a supplement into your diet, into your day, ask a lot of questions. First of all, what could I possibly lose as a result of introducing this to my diet? Could I lose a lot of money? Could it have detrimental effects on my health? What is the research, and how was that research done? Was this tested on like 10 people, or was it tested on thousands of people? And were those results replicated by another study? After 5 years of taking those supplements, did those people still see good results? Or has it even been 5 years since this supplement was introduced? These are some of just the general questions that we always want to ask when somebody is trying to sell us something. And I know it's a really tired line, but you always want to just double check with your doctor, because you never know what's going to have a negative interaction with the medications that you're already taking.
I think that's terrific, Mina. Thank you for that. And so kind of to build on that further is we're giving you this list of websites here. And this, by the way, again, the presentation will be emailed out to you, so you will get a copy. So don't feel like you have to rush and copy all these websites down. You'll get this information. But we want you, all of you folks, when you are looking at what are the good things I can do, what supplements might I consider, what, looking for some guidance in terms of all these different things that are out there in front of us with information as to how to do this and how to do that. With regards to dementia, and Alzheimer's disease, we want you folks going to trusted websites. There's lots of misinformation out there, and you need to be a critical thinker and a careful consumer, and we want to support you in that. So it's vitally important that you go to trusted websites, and here are a few of them. And there is the Alzheimer's Association. This is the national organization. They have a chapter here in San Diego. Of course, it's a different organization from ours, and they have great information for you to be able to access on their website. We've got the Alzheimer's and Related Diseases Education and Referral Center. And we refer to that, sometimes you may hear us say professional, and we call it ADIR. And that's also a great website to go to. Of course, there's us, Alzheimer's San Diego, and there is our website. And I'll talk more about us and all the different things we do. We've got the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, and they're getting all the focus of attention with regards to COVID-19 right now, but This is a good source and a trusted source that you can go to for disease information regarding dementias as well too. The Family Care Alliance is a terrific website as well that you can go to for some trusted information. The Mayo Clinic is always kind of the top of my list that I go to whenever I have questions or thoughts about dementias and other diseases, and just wondering what what the Mayo Clinic is saying with regards to looking at those things and research and medications and such. The National Institute on Aging is a really great source to go to for some good solid information. And UCLA Alzheimer's and Dementia Care Program is uclahealth.org. Is really fantastic as well too. And in addition to the information they also have some really great videos that you can have a look at with regards to just kind of caregiving issues and managing challenging situations. So that's a great website to access as well too. So use these sources of information. And of course, as always, use us. So if you're having trouble kind of finding some of the information you want, or the support that you need, or the guidance that you're looking for, please call us. You can call us at this number, 858-492-4400. You can also access our website. And so what do we have happening in Alzheimer's San Diego to assist you with? We have a great team of dementia care consultants and folks that are Mina and myself, we're members of that team, and we're on the phones 8:30 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you can call us at any point in time for questions and concerns, and we will, we've got some great experience and some great depth of knowledge, and we also have a really fantastic wealth of resource information at our hands that we've curated over the years. And so you can access that information through us. You don't have to be out there on your own looking online for information. Good chance that we likely have it there for you. We have virtual support groups going on, and by the way, all our programs and services are virtual at this point in time, but we've got over 25, I'm not even quite sure what the number is now, Mina, do you know? Support groups going on virtually.
I don't know, but it's an impressive number.
Yes. Of course, we've got our online education and training like we're doing today. I know some of the names I've been seeing in Q&A and chat are familiar, so I know many of you have been joining us all along, and we encourage you to continue doing so. Of course, we have our volunteer tech team, and we really couldn't do it without them to just help in assisting with bridging some of the gaps between, using new technologies and being able to access information. We have social activities and outings that are continuing to go on. They are virtual though, however, and you can see a listing of those on our website. We have volunteers that are making masks that are reusable in the sense that they can be washed and dried and used again. And if you need masks, you just need to give us a call and we will get those out to you. Our All's Companions program has gone virtual, so meaning that our volunteer companions are visiting with the families they're assigned to, just kind of in the same manner we are here today via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever platform is being used. And that's been a real benefit to families, again, when we're not able to do things in person and feeling perhaps a bit more socially isolated. We do offer counseling sessions for care partners, caregivers, who are being impacted not only by the person they're caring for with dementia, but also by all of the stresses and concerns related to COVID and sheltering in place. And we have a new program called Vite Alls, where we are putting volunteers, matching volunteers to people who are living alone in our community with a dementia of some type. And so these volunteers are staying in regular touch with these folks who are living alone, just as a part of the safety net to make sure they're doing okay, but also just to provide some companionship and connection with somebody who is reaching out to them on a regular basis. Those are all the things we do. It's a lot of stuff we do. And what I want you all to know, if you didn't know already, we are a local, independent, nonprofit organization. We don't receive any government funding of any sort. So we are dependent on our community to help us be able to provide all these programs and services, which, by the way, all are at no cost to the community, no cost. And so how do we achieve that? How do we keep these programs and services going? Well, one of our big ways to do that is our Walk for Alls. And 2020, no big surprise this year, we are going virtual. We traditionally have always had it in Balboa Park, which is a lovely place to go for a walk. This time around, we, in view of sheltering in place in the pandemic and our desire to keep our families, all of you folks, safe and pardon me, not being exposed to disease, we're doing it virtually. So you can join us, you can register, it doesn't cost you any money, and you can walk wherever you want to walk. You can walk around your neighborhood, your local park, in your backyard, get on your treadmill, whatever it is. If you choose to fundraise for us, that's fantastic, and we appreciate your support. But even if that's not a possibility for you, please join us. So that's our walk coming up on October 17. And a little bit, excuse me, a little bit more information for you, just in terms of where you can go to access information and resources with us, which is online and by phone. And we also have a live chat on our website. And Kristen, I'm going to ask you if you would, we have a follow-up services request form that Kristen could send out to us in chat, to all of you folks in chat, so that if you want some follow-up with regards to some specific questions you have about your situation or your caregiving challenges or whatever they might be, you can just fill out that form and that will come back to us, and a member of our team will follow up with you, okay? So we'll get Kristen to get that sent out here to us in just a moment. And let me see here. We've got a couple classes coming up here, folks, that you may be interested in. And managing resistance. This is intended for care partners. And that will be on October 8th at 1 p.m. And I will be co-hosting and teaching with Amy on that particular day. And then we've got legal and financial basics that's going on October 14th. And we will have an attorney presenting for that particular webinar that day. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure who it is, but details about the classes and pre-registration is on our website, so please have a look at that. And so you will be receiving an online survey at the end of today's program, and we do ask if you would complete that for us. We do value your feedback. We use that information to look at things and see how we can maybe make things a little bit better or easier for you, or perhaps clearer for you. So it's important to us. Your materials will be sent out to you by email from today's class, so don't worry about that. You're going to get the copy of the slide deck that we went through. And a recording of today's webinar will be available, posted to our online webinar library usually in about 24 hours, a day, maybe 2 days. So, and we've got our recorded versions of some of our previous classes that we've done also in that library. So have a look at that. So that's it for today, folks. We thank you for being with us, and Mina, thanks to you, my co-host, and to Kristen for managing chat and Q&A, which was busy, very busy today, and for Tanvi as well too, our volunteer tech team volunteer, and for assisting us with any of those technology issues or concerns that may have come in.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and stay well, stay healthy, stay hydrated. It's hot out there.
Thanks so much for joining us. It was a great class. You guys had awesome questions. Thank you so much.